It's time for you to be baptized into this life. Just like Kanan did for me and Ghost.
Big voice messaging system.
Hey, it's me. We have a problem. Claudia Flynn is cooperating with the feds. She's agreed to testify.
I'm back in the field for the pennant, about to drill like a fax.
Time to go terrorize the devil.
What's going on, YouTube, man? We back at it again with another video here, and this week we are back for episode 4 of Force. And you know, this episode was a pretty good episode. I feel like every time, you know, in Power, we get a fire episode, I feel like the next episode after that is going to be like a little toned down, and it's going to like pick back up after that. So with all that being said, let's get into episode 4 of Power Book 4 Force. So following the last events that happened last episode, we just following back up this episode with Tommy coming to the bottom of the basement, confronting Gennard and Diamond about the whole shit that they had planned for D-Mac, but Tommy still does not know about the shit they had planned. He just walking up on them, and he ended up, and you know, Diamond telling D-Mac, you know, walking back to CBI. So Tommy is essentially confused, and he told Diamond that, like, you went against my rules, and Diamond looked at him like, man, rules? Like, nigga, we partners. So Diamond ends up telling Tommy about everything that happened with King Kilo, D-Mac, and, you know, D-Mac offering King Kilo's nephew. So he ended up telling Tommy he brought D-Mac back into CBI, essentially, you know, protect him from everything that was going on. And he wasn't going to tell Tommy, we know this is not true, because Diamond and Gennard set up that plan for D-Mac to get took out. So now when Tommy gets this information from Diamond about the whole King Kilo situation, he told Diamond, about some more time with King Kilo, I'm going to figure some shit out. And now we know that Rashard from the SODs, he just won out the whole coalition. He's just not fucking with the whole old man mentality that they got going on. And essentially, he was going to go work with the Marquez cartel, but at this time, Tommy and Diamond don't have this information. We're gonna find that out later in the episode. So coming over here to the boy D-Mac, he on the phone with the girl Genesis, and he, you know, he's showing off his chain and shit, you know, talking this shit, and you know, she essentially not impressed with the shit that he got going on the whole street life shit. So then Tommy comes banging on the door, asking for D-Mac to come open the door so they could talk about everything that happened in the previous clip with Diamond and Gennard and the whole CBI shit. They having a whole conversation about everything that transpired in the last couple of clips. And Tommy ended up telling, you know, D-Mac, like, look, man, the person that you off is the nephew of King Kilo. And D-Mac didn't really give a fuck at first. He said, man, I'll smoke King Kilo my damn self. And Tommy is looking at him like, man, that's the fucking problem that we're in the predicament that we're in right now. So Tommy ended up asking D-Mac, you know, you still got the gun from when you end up doing the shit? D-Mac said yes, and Tommy instantly called this nigga an amateur. Cause it's like, bro, D-Mac, why do you still got this gun, bro? You doing all this big bag and tough shit. Why do you still got the weapon when you did this shit? Tommy ended up telling, you know, like, hand me the gun, I'm gonna go figure some shit out, man. Till then, man, sit your ass down until I figure some shit out. Stacy and her crew, she now learns that the whole fentanyl overdose has, you know, spiraled in Chicago. Cause Bobby had her on the phone, and there was a group of frat people that was, you know, essentially overdosed on fentanyl. So now that she got to worry about this now, about this and running for mayor, so she got to nip this in the bud, you know, damn near immediately. So, and she ended up putting two and two together, like, you know, maybe the Marquez cartel, when they arrive, you know, now this is coming. So it's like, she ended up putting two and two together, you know, like maybe this is coming from the Marquez cartel. Coming over here to Tommy and Victor, Tommy ends up handing Vic the gun that D-Mac ended up taking off Mad Dog with. And Tommy ends up telling Victor, you know, hold the gun, and when I tell you to give me a gun, I'm gonna text you. And now Vic ends up telling Tommy about the whole donation that Stacy Marks, you know, was essentially eager about in her campaign, and essentially she needs the shit. Tommy ended up telling Vic, like, look, we're gonna make a sizable donation to her campaign, and when you make that sizable donation, make sure it comes back to me. So now that Tommy got the information, he already essentially knows that she can't resist it and she needs the money. And when you come back and look at Vic in that last scene, you can see him holding on to that gun. You can feel and just look and tell that this man Victor is thinking of a plan. He thinking of a plan to get out, bro, because we already know that in the next episode, he gonna be talking to, you know, some of his people from the north side. So coming over here to Gennard and Shanti. Shanti is pissed at Gennard for the whole plan that happened with D-Mac and Diamond, because, you know, she told Gennard, you know, to get close with Diamond and, you know, get in his head because he a fragile nigga, that she said. But she still feel like, you know, Gennard working her own, he working his own little loop and keeping her out of the loop and not telling her anything, essentially. She ain't fucking with that shit. And, you know, Gennard basically gotta, he gotta calm the whole situation down. Gennard ended up telling Shanti, like, look, the closer I get to Diamond, the more FaceTime we're gonna get with Che, because you already know that Shanti want to get with Che, and she want to get that top spot to end up being a connect and, you know, get that relationship. You all know that Shanti want to end up taking over CBI, and she using Gennard essentially to do that. Coming over here to Stacy Marks and Claudia, we know they having a conversation about the whole fentanyl outbreak that's going on in Chicago, and Stacy Marks is trying to get more intel on what's going on with that, and she wants Claudia to flip on the Marquez cartel. Claudia still end up planning to flip on the Marquez cartel, and she end up telling Stacey like, look, I can get you more on Tommy Egan. I'm gonna have my girl, she gonna plant a wire essentially, or she gonna record Tommy talking, and we're gonna do it like that. And you know, Stacey was still kind of iffy about it, but she said, look, if you can get me Tommy Egan flipping on the Estrada cartel, then you know maybe we can work something out and you know reduce your sentence. Coming over here to Rashawn and Malik, part of the Sons of Destruction, you know, and they told Tommy like basically like, look man, we out, we're not really fucking with the whole old man shit y'all got going on, because you know they got bodies dropping in the streets and no retaliation going on essentially, and it's making them in danger essentially. You know, Diamond and them telling them like, look man, you know we can work something out, but you know Rashawn was like, man, look, basically like, look, I'm not fucking with y'all. Y'all take this bread and shit, we out. So they end up leaving the shit, and the dude Malik end up, you know, leaving a note underneath one of the bags of cash, and they said to meet at this spot at 8 p.m. to work out a deal with Tommy and Diamond. But with all that being said, Tommy got the thought in his head, you know, since Malik wanted the top spot, why don't we just give Rashawn and give him the King Kilo and place a D-Mac and make it look like that Rashawn did it, so that way Kilo can have a body that he can just essentially back up off of us. And we know Diamond was fucking with the plan because he don't want his hands tied to anything that got to do with D-Mac. So coming over here to AUSA scene, he ends up telling Emma that Stacey Marks is trying to flip Claudia, and he ends up telling her like, look, she's a high value asset and I can use her in many ways. And Emma ended up telling her like, you know, you got to tell the cartel this, you know, because you can't just let this just happen, because if you know if that goes out and all this happens, that's gonna blow everything up. And the whole goal is for Stacey Marks to lose her job and he becomes the new U.S. Attorney of Chicago. Going over here to Diamond and Janara, we know Diamond is telling Janara like, look man, we gotta think of a new plan. We gotta make it look like that Rashard was the one that took out Mad Dog instead of D-Mac, because once we do that shit, you know, everything will be nipped in the bud. We're gonna have to worry about this shit no more. And we know Janara and telling him like, man, nigga, I ain't Houdini. How the fuck am I supposed to pull this shit off? Like, man, what the hell? And Diamond up telling this nigga, look, nigga, listen and lock in. Coming over here to Shanti, she ended up talking to the girl Manny Fresh, the girl that Jannar had ended up robbing last season. But all that being said, you know, they was talking about a whole partnership going on, and the dude ended up walking from behind and asking her, you know, was you Jannar's girl? And Manny Fresh was fucking with that because she still want that nigga Jannar's head. And you know, this is fucking up with Shanti's reputation and how she moved around in the streets, and Shanti really wasn't fucking with that. So Tommy being Tommy, he ends up, you know, negotiating a deal to tell him like, look, you know, all this shit that's been going on, but you know, if you triple our product, you know, he can make some more bank than triple what we making right now. Because you already know that I'm good for it and my whole crew good for it. And you know, CBI really ain't ever gave y'all problem. And we know Che ended up agreeing with that shit. And you know, Miguel was salty as fuck. And you know that Miguel is still trying to take out Tommy. And this is gonna make Miguel look even worse than what he is right now. Coming over here to Janara Shanti, you know, Shanti is still mad about everything that happened earlier. And you know, she basically told Janara like, look, like, is this shit true? Confronting him about the shit. And he ended up denying the shit, of course, saying that, you know, it's not true. And Shanti's telling this nigga like, you know, this is my reputation on these streets, and they being muddied by all the shit that you've been doing and did in the past. So Shanti ends up walking out of the boxing gym fucking mad, and you know, Janara had to fucking, you know, fix the whole situation. And he told her, you know, look, I'm gonna fix everything with Manny Fresh. Just you know, just chill and relax. Coming over here to Miguel and Maria, they're meeting at Tommy house. I really don't understand it on Maria's part. That was kind of stupid. Like, why would you let your man's enemy inside of his own house, especially while he's not even there? We know that Miguel is trying to set up a dinner for, you know, the whole family and want to invite Tommy and Maria. And he ended up telling her like, it's going to be the restaurant of your choice. But we know this is also going to be a setup, you know, to get Tommy ambushed by Ortega and his crew. Because we already know that after this scene right here, we already know that he ended up calling Ortega about the whole plan and tell him that the next time I call you, I'm gonna have a location for you to ambush Tommy Egan. So coming over to this scene, we got Elise and Tommy, and earlier in the episode, we know that Claudia had asked Elise to, you know, record Tommy talking about, you know, incriminated evidence. So Tommy already knew something was off over it. You know, he got that feeling, and she was asking weird questions, and Tommy ended up pulling her closer and ended up finding out that she was recording on her phone. And he threw that shit in the damn sink and ended up telling her like, look, if you want to keep your fucking leg and end up in a wheelchair, I suggest you cut this bullshit out. And I was like, man, that's Tommy fucking Egan. Coming over here to saying is Stacey Marks. He ended up telling her about the whole press going on at the warehouse. And you know, she pissed off about everything because how the fuck is they gonna suppress a warehouse that was essentially abandoned, which is a very, very great point. And we all know that saying is trying his best, you know, trying to fuck the whole case up, but to her on the outside looking in, it's looking like, you know, he's trying his best, but we all know that he's fucking up everything that's going on for this case. I'm telling this nigga like, look, you want to keep this case alive, you know, get up your motherfucking ass and keep the case alive. Coming over here to Jannard and Joy, the dude from last season that Jannard was smoking with. So, cutting to the chase for real. He needed his chain bag that he sold to Joy for some, you know, some blow. And Joy wasn't really going for it. So, you know, Jannard ended up giving him the fent that he had. And Joy took it, ended up ODing. And, you know, now Jannard ended up getting his chain back. And now he's going to make it right with Manny Fresh. Now we come over here to JP, man. You know, this is our first time seeing JP this season. And, you know, it's D-Mac. And he came over, you know, to just highlight his pops and just, you know, apologize for everything that he said last season. You know, just told him, you know, man, look. JP told him, like, look, I love you. I'm here for you. Whatever you need, I got you. And, you know, he just had to come here and just had this conversation with his pop just to let him know that everything all good. So, coming over here to Manny Fresh and Jannard, he ended up giving her chain back and, you know, just apologized about everything that was going on, telling her, like, I needed product. I was fucked up. And, you know, I just needed to work, essentially. And, you know, she was kind of iffy at first, wasn't really fucking with it, but don't let it interfere with Shanti and, you know, let her fuck up any potential business, you know, because she knows what she's doing, essentially. And, you know, Manny Fresh ended up lighting it up. And like, all right, yeah, whatever, nigga. Now, as we come over here, we got Tommy and Diamond setting up Rashawn so they can frame him for, you know, the whole thing that happened with Mad Dog, and you know, so D-Mac can be in the clear. And this is also a payback for leaving the coalition and not falling in line. So you know, they end up getting their get back, and they end up dropping a fucking engine on top of this man's entire torso and splitting that bitch wide open. So coming over here to Jannard ends up telling her the big news about everything that happened with Manny Fresh. And Jannard ended up telling her, like, look, I'm gonna make that nigga Diamond give me a seat at the table with Che. And Jannard ended up getting a text from Diamond saying that they gotta meet. And, you know, Ashanti wasn't really fucking with that. And he ended up telling her that, you know, we got to convince King Kilo that D-Mac wasn't the one that did it. And, you know, it's a long story and he can't really talk about it. And he ended up just, you know, just getting out of there and just storming out. Whole plan backfiring with the recording device on Tommy. That went to shit. Stacey Marshall is really falling out of options with Claudia and not really fucking with Claudia right now. And Claudia is desperate, telling her that, look, if you want me to get Tommy, you gotta let me out, essentially. And that's gonna be the only way, because I know he's gonna come after me if I do get out. And Stacey Marks said, on one more term, you gotta do this and you gotta testify against the Marquez cartel. And we do know that Claudia ends up doing that. Coming over here to King Kilo and Jannard, he ended up telling King Kilo, like, look, D-Mac was not the one that did it. Rashard from the SODs did it. And King Kilo wasn't all the way, you know, convinced. He told him, like, look, I need confirmation that he was even robbed. And Jannard told him, like, look, bro, we got all that. Like, that's a done deal. And for good measure, I even take a little nigga D-Mac out myself if you still want me to do that shit. So it's looking for us, like, as a viewer, like, is King Kilo really believing everything that Jannard is telling him? So coming over here to Jannard and Diamond, they talked about the whole thing that was going on with King Kilo and how essentially, you know, Jannard convinced them and everything went according to the plan. And, you know, Diamond essentially, like, just gave him a pat on the back. And Jannard wasn't really fucking with that shit. Like, man, I did that shit for us. I didn't do this shit for Tommy, D-Mac. I did this shit for us to get this nigga off our back. And, you know, Jannard just ended up storming out, just pissed off that, you know, he getting treated like he just not shit and he don't mean nothing on CBI. So Stacey Marks ended up saying, like, you know, look, wait, we got Claudia Finn under our bros right now and we're releasing her right now. She's working with us to go against the Marquez cartel. And we already know that Sane is going to lose his shit because the information that he was trying to withhold from keeping from the cartel earlier that I said in this review, he ended up keeping that information from the cartel because if the cartel knew about this, Claudia would be gone automatically off of it. Now, coming over here to Tommy and D-Mac, Tommy is now finally going to baptize D-Mac into the game because Tommy just accepted the reality that, you know, D-Mac is going to always be in the game. He's not going to ever stop trying to be in the game. So he said, look, I'm going to teach you how, you know, Kanan taught me in Ghost, essentially how to be in the game, and just like how Tasha told Tariq. So now that boy D-Mac about to get his GED in the streets. So now we get a text from Vic telling Tommy that Claudia ended up getting out of prison. And now we finally see that boy Tommy get into that mode. He about to lock in. He about to start moving real strategic because he should already know that Claudia already got all the feds in the world behind her right now and think of a next move, what he gonna do. And we're gonna have to see what's gonna happen next week on Power Book 4 Force episode 5, which is probably gonna be a real big episode. So if you like the content that I'm dropping here today, bro, like, comment, subscribe, share this video. I'm out.